Oh, here we are. We're live. Good evening, everyone. It's Cheryl Akle, Better Reading. Hello. Now, for the regulars, I'm not usually here on a Wednesday night, but today is very, very special. We have Maya Lee here with us today. She is the author of a memoir called The Nazis Knew My Name. So, welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us. It's Cheryl Akle. I'm here this evening with Maya Lee, and we are talking about her book, which has just been released. It was Book of the Week for us last week. The Nazis Knew My Name. It's a memoir. It's really special. So I'm just waiting for a few people to get on before we get started. Hello, Maya. Do you want to say hi to everybody?
Hi, everybody. It's so lovely to be here with you all, and I'm looking forward for this exchange of ideas and thoughts and questions.
Yeah, absolutely. Can't wait for the conversation. Welcome. Welcome to the regulars. Welcome to the newbies. And, I'm going to start with an introduction. So our special guest, as I said, is Maya Lee, and she's here to talk to us about her new book, The Nazis Knew My Name. It's an extraordinarily moving memoir by Australian Slavonican Holocaust survivor Magda Hellinger, who is your mum. Is that right? Yeah.
Yes.
And who saved an untold number of lives at Auschwitz through everyday acts of courage and kindness. Magda's daughter, who's here with us tonight, Maya, took her mother's personal account and, after extensive research, including testimonies from fellow Auschwitz survivors, completed the book we're all reading today. And I know many of you are reading this. It's really been very popular with our readers, as you can imagine, Maya. It's an awe-inspiring tale that offers us incredible insight into human nature, the power of resilience, and the goodness that can shine through even the most horrific of conditions. Welcome tonight. It really is such an honour and a pleasure to be working with you. We've got a few people joining us already. So hi, Jane. Hi, Dan. So people are on board, which is great. Hi, Meg. Alison says good evening to Maya and myself. Diane says hello to both of us. Molly. Craig says hi. And Juliet says, your mum's story was so moving. What a brave woman. I have this book and I'm so looking forward to it, says Diane. Mary says hi and Anne says hi. Why don't we start with you telling us about the book? Tell me what the story is about, and then we'll talk about, why you came to putting together your mother's memoir now.
Okay. Well, my mother was a 25-year-old woman, lady, girl, and who was rounded up by the Linker Guard military wing of the SS in Slovakia. And she was taken to Auschwitz with 120 other girls from the same area. She spoke German perfectly, and being 25 years old also helped her being a little bit more mature than many of the young girls around her. In her youth, she was involved with the Hashemeh Atzair, which is a Zionist youth movement, and she was very involved with the leadership there, and she gained a lot of experience leading organizations and establishing new organizations groups in other cities in Slovakia. She, as I said, she spoke German. So when she arrived in Auschwitz with all these young girls in most horrifically panicked and frightened state, she was able to nurture them and be kind and be with them to help them cope with this horrible new environment. I hadn't said that she was also a trained professional kindergarten teacher. So together with one side being a leadership position and the other one a kindergarten, it did help her at the very beginning. Her talents were noted at the very beginning by Irma Grazer and another woman called Marie, who was a Stubenalteste, which is a room leader. And she nominated Mum as a student room assistant. And that meant that she was responsible at that point to go to the bread bakery or the bread area and bring the food and bread back to the girls. And there's a lot of interesting events happened because the camp at that point was run by German women criminal prisoners. And they were not particularly welcoming to these new Jewish girls. At some point, they claimed that they were a competition to them. They thought that they came here to, not sure what they thought. So it was very difficult at the beginning, but Mum was able to gain their respect by doing some amazing things which they felt was more than they expected from a Jewish woman.
Yeah, she had natural leadership qualities, didn't she?
She did. She did. And it was also very pragmatic and very positive and very, a very positive person. And she just took it in her stride, as horrible as it was.
I'll stop you right there for a minute, and then I'm going to ask you the next question, which is, why write this now? I'll just take a few comments. Leslie says, hi, Leslie, from Inverell. Holly from Port Stephens, very interesting story, and thanks for giving us the background. Karen Spark says, hi, Karen. Marge, looking forward to reading the book. Louise, a very warm welcome to you both. Thank you, Louise. Helena says, hi. Wendy, good evening from Wagga. Christine have just started this beautiful book. Now, if anyone has any questions for Maya, we will be very, very happy to take them. Wendy says, have been looking at this book, very interested in this period of time and learning about what happened and how people survived. Joybell is one of our regulars, looking forward to reading this book. Okay, Maya, why now? Why bring this book together now and publish it?
Okay, my mother wrote her own memoir, which is this one, when she was 87 years old. The year before, she took her manuscript, which she had been working on for years, to the printer. He printed it. She had it launched with a WITSO group, which is a Women's International Zionist organization. She raised some money for the organization, and that was that. And we didn't really get too involved with her story. We didn't get involved with her book. She told us things as we were growing up, and we said, yes, Mum, we've heard that before, and just, okay. But most of the things she did tell us, none of the pain and anguish of the camps, more about what she did and how she managed to save a lot of girls in this horrible, horrible place, using her understanding of the Nazis' evil and deceitful practices. And she was able to see them for what it was. She wasn't blinded by it because she could understand what they were saying. Anyway, so that was fine. She launched a book. Everything was forgotten. I got a phone call from a gentleman in Perth in 2014. And he said he had just seen a documentary about my mother or something like that. And it was an incredible story of courage and tenacity and ingenuity. And there should be a book written about this. Well, I said, as a matter of fact, there is a book written about it, this one. Oops, this way. And I'll send it to you if you like. So I sent it across to him to Perth and forgot all about it. 2 years later, he calls me again. Maya, I've just read this book. It's an incredible book. It really gives me a very deep insight into what she was doing. But he says to me, there is an article which your mother refers to in the back of her book, which refers to an article in a Hungarian language paper in Israel. And my mother says that this article talks about her and it's in the book. And he, this gentleman from Perth, is telling me that this article is not in the book. Now, I know the article. Hang on, where is it? I knew the article. This is it, framed in pink. There's a big article in that newspaper in Hungarian, and I know that my mother had it translated into English. So I thought, oh my God, what an amazing, incredible article. It really verifies first-hand experience of what my mother does and did. So I thought, how can I do this? I can't just have it printed, have this reprinted and put it in the back. It has to be done properly. So I had an editor edit this book, and I thought, okay, we'll put it in somehow in that new edition. Well, she was telling me it needs primary sources, more primary sources, because the story is incredible, but it needs to be validated.
Verified, yeah.
Verified, yeah. So I said, I have primary sources because many years before, that late 90s, a distant cousin came to Australia to do a family tree. But when she met Mum, she got so engrossed in my mother's Holocaust story, she decided she's going to investigate and research more about that. And that time, my mother was able to tell her and give her names of other survivors around the world, other block artistas, and she went to interview them. So all of a sudden, I had all these interviews of all these block artistas. So I thought, okay, now what do I do? I can't just stick. So I decided to look for an author. And I was very fortunate that David Brewster was available to do this. Now, that's how we started. Now, the reason this book is so different to all other books is because my mother was there for 3.5 years. And during that time, she had many different roles. And no one has ever written about these women in their own position, because after the war, they were all sort of compromised and, they were considered they were collaborators. So many women didn't talk about it. My mother was very okay with all of this. She had no doubt about what she did, and she was happy to talk about what she did. She did testimonies with a U.S. Holocaust Museum in Washington, with the Yad Vashem Museum in Israel, with the Shoah Foundation with Steven Spielberg, and also with the Holocaust Museum here in Melbourne. And so that helped me also a lot with finding more details which she actually left out of her own book. So there was more details and explanations, because when she wrote it, she was in a hurry. And in the interim also, during the years of the late 1990s, she was constantly approached, consequently as a consequence of those videos she did for the various museums. And there's all these researchers and academics were writing in those days, asking her myriads of questions about a particular situation in the camp, a particular SS in the camp. And my mother wrote and responded to every one of them very comprehensively, and long letters. And what she did, which is so unusual, she actually took her responses to the post office, had them photocopied. So I've got her answers to all those questions. So from
extraordinary. I'm just going to read a comment from Laura, which is, timely. Laura says that she loved your book. It was very thought-provoking. Out of all the incredible and difficult moments, was there a particular moment in your mother's life that stood out the most to you?
I guess you mean in the time in Auschwitz?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, as I was going through this book and finding out all these incredible details, and which I never really knew about before because I really wasn't listening, I tried to visualize how it could have been or must have been. Firstly, on a cattle train with another 100 or 90 or 100 young girls, no water, no food, in a blackened wagon with a little bucket in the corner for a toilet. I try to visualize that, and I find that horrific. And how they remained sane for the 2 days. I tried to visualize how my mother handled the situation when they arrived in Auschwitz, and those German prisoners, criminal prisoners, they brought the food to them, the drink, the tea, and they said, "Oh, you can drink this if you want to, but it's poisoned." My mother didn't believe them. She thought, why would they bring us here after 2 days of travel in the trains only to poison us on the first day? So she told the girls, "I'm going to taste the soup or whatever that was, and if I don't drop dead, then you'll know it's okay."
Yeah,
and
extraordinary.
Okay. So yeah, that was quite incredible.
I've got another question here from Donna. What effect did your mother's story have on you as you were researching it, as you became aware of the full extent of your mother's story? That's a great question.
It is a great question, actually. I have done well. I knew my mother. Okay, my mother was a very strong and very pragmatic woman. So whatever I came across, I could see it in my mind. I could visualize my mother doing what she was doing, because I just knew that's what she can do. But I did feel for her, as I said, on the wagon. There was a part in the book where she gets punished and she goes to the standing cells, which is a cell 90 by 90 centimeters for 4 women to stand all night. And then work the next all day as well. That really sort of made me feel really, really sad and upset. How could anyone survive that? And she did. Incredible.
Do you know, it's extraordinary. I often, and I've spoken Maya, to refugees, that have experienced such great hardship, and like your mother, I mean, she would have seen so many horrific things, experienced great hardship, yet they come to another country and they start a new life, and I find that so incredible that they raise beautiful children, and they start working all over again, and in a way kind of reinventing themselves and putting the past behind them. I find that that's extraordinary, isn't it?
Well, it's not that, how to put it, it's not so easy. Many
No.
survivors did not recover from the war.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
remained traumatized and stressed and very, very unhappy. And their
Oh.
children grew up in a very difficult surrounding. We were lucky. My mother left Auschwitz behind. She did not dwell upon the misery, the horror. The only thing she was ever, from my point of view, talking about to us, whenever we listened, was about how she was able to use her position to save people. Now, after the war, she went back to her hometown, met up with her girlfriend who did not go to camp because she was married to a non-Jew. They sat down, had dinner, and life went on. They never talked about what happened. I wish I could have asked my mother, what is it? How come that no one asked you, where have you been for 3.5 years? But also, her town was not like it was when she left.
No.
All her family was gone. All her neighbours, the Jewish neighbours, were no longer there. It's not the same city. So
and life would never have been the same once she got back. No. Anne says, "Oh, this is amazing. Thank you, Anne." Debbie, hope Michaela is okay. Thought she was going to be conducting this interview. She was, and she was unable to do it tonight. So I stepped in for her. So sorry about that, Debbie. And it was really last minute, so we didn't have time to let you know. But I should have brought that up at the start. Anyway, for those of you that have tuned in, it's Cheryl Akle, and I'm with Maya Lee, and we're talking about her mother's story, The Nazis Knew My Name. Helena says, what an amazing story. Nikki, a question: how did you handle the emotion while writing and researching your mother's story?
Actually, I am my mother's daughter. And I didn't get too emotional about the story. I was just doing what I had to do because I wanted her story to be told, because this is what my mother wanted to do. And now I felt I was doing it in a way which is so different and much more open with detail than my mother was able to do. So no, I didn't get so emotional. I have the same nature as my mother. I'm very pragmatic and very practical. And the story it's just something which I was so happy to be able to tell.
So Melissa says hello to both of us. Hi, Melissa. Linda says, this is an amazing interview. Your mother was a strong person. She was indeed. Alison, what a wonderful role model for you to have a mother like you did. You are blessed. Carolyn says, it sounds such an amazing story and book. Debbie, thank you for your response. You are doing a wonderful job of this interview, and what a story. Thank you so much, Debbie. Tell me, when you're trying to put something together like this, and how much original documents did you have? Like, what was it like in terms of research? I know you had your mother's book, but what else did you have of hers?
Well, as I mentioned before, I had all the letters she had written back to all the historians, academics who were asking specific questions about Auschwitz, about Block 10, about Irma Grazer, about Kramer, and she responded to those questions. She didn't have all of those things in her book, but the answers were for these people. Now, the problem was, and the reason why she actually did her little book, was she thought these people are going to write a book about her. She did not realize that they were just researching for their own books. And that's why at the age of 87, she thought, I'm going to write this myself. So she was also writing copious of writing pads full of handwritten story, like her own writing it out. I was able to go through them all to 2 or 3 different attempts of rewriting and writing and rewriting. There was a lot of little details in different manuscripts. One particular one, we're talking about the shoemaker, which is the one which actually, at the beginning, offered to protect her if she became his mistress. He didn't spell it out in so many words, but that was the impression. I didn't know until I looked through all her papers, his name was Mr. Carhot. Mum just called him the shoemaker. Now, suddenly I had a name, and I thought that's how I got extra information.
Mm.
And also watching all those videos she's made, the testimonies. In every one of them, there's something a little bit extra which wasn't in the other one. And so I didn't make anything up. It was all purely her words.
Okay, Mary says, amazing story based on real events. It is. Wonderful interview, keen to read. Thank you, Mary. Susan, good evening, ladies. Wow, this is going on my TBR list. Do you know what that is?
No.
To be read list.
Oh, wonderful. Yeah.
Yes, it's some of the language that we use here at Better Reading, because our readers are such avid readers. Thank you, and your mother. Thank you to you, Maya, and to your mother, Tracy. Thank God they wrote their stories, absolutely, so we could find out about it. Wendy says, I'm thinking you would be very proud to be able to document this amazing story of your mum with her own extra information, a wonderful tribute to her. And do you feel that? Do you feel that it's a really special tribute to her?
I am really, really thrilled that she is now probably resting in peace, knowing that her story is told the way she wanted to be told. I think it's something it had to be told, because after the war, they had, she and many other block artists and people in position or prisoner functionaries were, people pointed their fingers at her. It was her, it was her, it was she, and they had to defend themselves. So, and I've now realized by bringing this book out, it'll be explained and people will know that she was not a collaborator. And another way, people who knew all about capos. Capos were people who were in charge of the working groups, the working commandos, and they were cruel and evil, and their reputation brushed everybody else in the same way. And Mum was very definitive that she was not a capo, because her role was not in charge of working groups. Her role was to keep order, to make sure that the girls had an idea what was going on around them, try to tell them not to believe the lies of the Germans, because the Germans used to woo them with particular games to try to, it's in the book, the whole stories of it. But yeah, so I'm just so excited that her story's out there. And yes,
yeah, and it really is a wonderful book. And Maya's mother's name, just because maybe I've not said it enough, is Magda Hellinger. Also, for those of you that haven't purchased the book yet but are going to, there's a wonderful picture section as well. So you had quite, some photos, haven't you? You had quite a few.
Because at one point they were allowed to have send postcards. This is Kramer. These are some of the evil SS guards, which Mum knew by name. This is the whole thing. She knew all these guards. She knew them all by name. Not many of the prisoners who survived knew who these people were. They just knew them as horrible, evil people. And they knew her by her name, So yet to everybody else, she was just a number. Yeah. So this is family, and it's really rather.
Yeah, it's a wonderful picture section. Laura says your mother had cheated death many times in Auschwitz. Yes. Do you believe her role was her destiny, as almost predicted by the rabbi?
I think so. I don't think she thought about it very much beforehand. It's just as every time, she didn't think of that when she was acting and saving situations. It's just after she was rescued from death, she realized that this is why it's not my time yet. I still have to do what I have to do.
Extraordinary. Yvette says, thank you. A wonderful interview. Could you give me some insight into the title of the book? I think you just made reference to that.
Yeah, the Nazis
didn't even know her name.
Yeah. Well, she had her tattoo number was 2318. It's only 4 digits, and the 2 refers to the second transport to Auschwitz. So she was there 2 days after the first transport, and all their numbers start with 1. Now, very soon after some time, the Nazis, the main commanders, and Irma Grazer particularly, knew her by name. And she was Magda or Hellinger to most of the senior SS. The ordinary junior ones may or may not have known her name, but the ones which counted, with whom she can maneuver and manipulate a little bit with chutzpah, they knew her name.
Marisa says, looking forward to reading this book, enjoying the interview. Thanks, Maya and Cheryl. Thank you. Thanks, Maurice. Marge, great interview, a must-read book, and I'm sure your mother would be proud of your work. I'm sure she would be.
Yes.
Jody says, what an amazing story. I can't wait to read it. Shez says, she was so lucky after 3.5 years to walk out. Yeah, extraordinary, isn't it?
Yes. And the last,
Lynn, I've got a
sorry.
question from Lynn. Sorry, did your
No.
mum have any ongoing health issues during her life? That's a good question.
Yes, a very good question, actually. Apart from the fact that she had to have all her teeth removed because they were totally rotten through that condition, so she had to wear dentures. Otherwise, no. Mentally, in every which way, she was perfect. Oh, she complained of arthritis, but I suppose we all get that, and we didn't spend 3.5 years in Auschwitz. No, thank God, no.
Okay, Juliet, I was so moved by your mum's story. Thank you so much for sharing it. Mary, will the ebook have the pictures in it? I'm not sure about that. We'll have to. We'll find out.
The ebook.
Oh, yeah, I'm not sure about that. Diane, Maya, thank you and your mum for sharing her story. We must learn what came before us to ensure it doesn't happen again. Absolutely. Alison says, we'll definitely have to read it. Thanks so much for your time tonight. Okay, is there anything else that you'd like to share? I want to just point out the frame book behind you. Tell us about that.
Okay, that is the book. Actually, it's a whole book inside, recessed into a frame. It was when it was my birthday in July, so the children decided to give me that as a birthday present. So the book, the whole book, recessed inside a frame.
Yeah. How long did it take you to put together this project?
From point one to the end. Hang on, 2019, 2021. By the time I got the contract from Simon & Schuster in March 2020, and we started this at the end of 2018. So that's 2 years.
Yeah,
and
that's pretty good.
Yeah, because that's what we wanted. I wanted to get it out there as quickly as possible, but it worked because I had all this extra information which I was able to research as we were going along. And I got in touch with Yad Vashem in Jerusalem. I got in touch with, all the different resources I had here to get more detail, and also the Holocaust Museum in Melbourne. So it was going along as we were writing. And
I think the cover is particularly beautiful. Can you talk to me about that photo?
Oh, the photo is with my mother in 1941. So she was 25 years old. Yeah, 25 or less than 25, because the following year, in March 42, almost about like 9 months later, she was on a train to Auschwitz. So this is in a happy photo in, I'm not quite sure exactly, somewhere around her town, or maybe she was visiting somewhere. And that was it, 1941. When I think about it, life was normal for them in 1941. She had just started her kindergarten. She was on her way to a profession and a career, and it all got into shatters.
It's just so unimaginable, isn't it, to live through wartime? And so many people obviously lived through World War I and World War II, but the atrocities are. I I remember when I was very young. I think I might have been in Year 9 and Year 10, and I found out, I first heard about the execution of the Jewish people in Germany, and I just kept thinking, where was the world? What was happening?
This is why my mother wrote her original book. She says, I want to tell the world that this happened to me and millions of other Jews. Tell the world that should know. And she was actually trying to combat the deniers as well. How can they deny my suffering and those of millions of others? It's happened, and I want the world to know, the teachers, priests, clergy, anyone, tell and talk about it.
Look, and genocide still happens. You would hope that we learn from it as a people, but we don't. Now, yes, the ebook does have the photo session. Michelle has just come in and told us that, which is wonderful. Peter, the Hungarian Jews were deported late in 1944. How come your mother was sent to Auschwitz so early, having spent 3.5 years?
Okay, my mother was from Slovakia. And in Slovakia, they were rounding up the Jews in March 1942.
Right.
They went straight to Auschwitz, and that's where she stayed for 3.5 years. Hi,
Yeah.
Peter. And I'm Peter.
Okay. All right. Extraordinary story. The book is called The Nazis Knew My Name. It's the story of Maya Lee's mother, Magda Hellinger. I can't thank you enough for tonight, Maya. It's been wonderful chatting with you. I know that our readers at home have loved it. Thank you all for joining us. As I said, I'm not usually here on a Wednesday night. I'm filling in, but I want to thank everybody who does join us on a Wednesday night. And thank you so much for participating. We introduced these segments just as COVID hit, really, to give authors opportunities to connect with readers digitally, because, that whole author tour, human to human contact disappeared. But
Yes.
what we have discovered, Maya, is that so many people love them, and we will continue them. So thank you so much, everyone, for your comments. We're out of time. Thank you so much to you, Maya Lee, for joining us tonight.
Thank you, Cheryl. Thank you, everybody, for being there in the audience. And thank you for having me.